Humans have been able to grow tremendously from being Neanderthals to being Homo sapiens sapien, from using stone tools to developing great things like the aeroplane and sophisticated weapons such as the nuclear and maybe viruses as weapons. This leads us to the topic of today. But before I continue, I always say, Hola, mi amigos. Welcome to another episode of Mysteries, History, Stories, and Theories. This is none other than Aniko, and we are inside Shepherd's TV where we bring you lots of things. Now, in these episodes, we are going to speak about the creation of mankind, not in relativity to what is written in the holy books, but in relativity to the Sumerian texts. This leads us to what we have already been able to grasp. According to my introduction, I believe you've come with something. Yes, you're right. The Anunnaki. So, who are the Anunnaki? And what does the Sumerian tablets say about the Anunnakis? Welcome again. Please subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. If you think that these things are sweet and you can be able to indulge with them, don't forget to hit the notification button and like. Yeah, you are my friend, mi amigo. Don't fail us. Now, as we continue, millions of years ago, some human-like creatures, or let's call them ape-like creatures, were found on the face of the earth. They walk in four limbs. But all of a sudden, like 7 million years or 4 million years ago, a chimpanzee or maybe an ape-like creature walked in twos. It took this same creature millions of years to develop to an extent of reasoning with others, being able to organize and strategize hunting methods, being able to communicate, being able to organize families. And then it took again millions of years for this creature to develop to an extent of creating weapons, stone-edged and stone-carved spears, which developed even for a very long time from it to become a highly developed spear or a little bit efficient spear from the one it was. It also took millions of years. So, but at a certain given point in time, this species developed so rapidly, taking only thousands of years to be able to be where the species is today, called Homo sapiens sapien. But what really could be able to bring into this catalysm of this creature? The only thing that could bring this kind of a thing is something that can only be explained either scientifically or technologically. This brings us to the introduction of the beings so-called the Anunnakis. Anunnaki simply means to others, or according to Zachariah Hitchens, the Anunnaki means those who from the heavens came. But recently it has been known that this is not literally the definition of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki means the royal blood or the royal ones, or the descendants of the royal ones, you see. So, where did they come from? And from which planet did the Anunnaki came from? The Anunnaki are said to have come from the planet Nibiru. And what is the reason of these aliens or these beings coming to Earth? This is one of the things that we are going to discuss in high details. Now, like 400 or 700, between 700,000 years to 400,000 years ago, it is said that beings arrived on Earth. But before that, the Sumerian tablets tells about the planet known as Nibiru. The planet Nibiru is a planet that takes around 3,600 years to rotate around the sun. Its revolution is 3,600 years. So, the whole story begins by a creature known as Anu. Anu is not the real name of this being, but Anu is the title of the king of Nibiru. Anu stands and looks at the environment and smiles or maybe laughs sarcastically. His laugh is sarcastical because the environment of which Anu is looking at has been highly polluted. Years ago, the environment of the Nibiru planet was a beautiful environment, but not anymore. The factories have been able to pollute the environment of Nibiru and create a very thick atmosphere. So, as Anu is standing on the balcony, is not laughing because of anything that is maybe laughable, but is laughing at the state of his planet Nibiru. The things are very much in awkward order. The environment and the atmosphere has highly been destroyed. Not really by the factories, because the factories that emitted the pollution could actually be controlled. And even the pollution could be controlled by the great machines they had created to go around the environs of Nibiru to clean the air. But all of a sudden, volcanoes started to erupt in the planet of Nibiru uncontrollably. That really caused great destruction of the atmosphere. There were no help because these things continued to happen, and the atmosphere continued to thicken and thicken and thicken. Years ago, many years ago, the atmosphere was beautiful. Nibiru had two moons which could clearly be seen. The twin moons could be seen and they could clearly be remembered by the elderly at this particular time. The sky in some years, thousands of years ago, was clear and the stars were clearly seen by the naked eyes, but not anymore. The plants were green, the atmosphere was beautiful, and everything was enjoyable, but not anymore. At this particular time, people only saw yellow atmosphere. The air was highly thick and nothing was good enough to be enjoyed. The life of the Anunnakis were about 200,000 years, which was a blessing. Yes, but this time round it was not considered a blessing anymore. Solution had to be brought on the table. So all the great minds of the Nibiru planet came together. They sat down to bring their wisdom on the solution about their planet Nibiru and about the destruction of the atmosphere of the Nibiru planet. They sat around the great king and trying to bring point after point after point. After many discussions, yes, a solution was found: gold. Only gold could be used to clean and cleanse the atmosphere. I know you wonder what is so much important in gold. It is a yellow thing. In fact, the importance of gold to man had not been known until the 20th century. Before the 20th century, gold was just a yellow, beautiful thing that could be looked at and expensive. But actually, before the 20th century, the things that we know about gold today had not been known. Now, what are some of the importance of gold? Gold, number one, is a very good conductor of electricity. The radioactive gold isotopes can destroy cancer cells. Nanoparticles of gold can clean environment. You see, gold can also be used to facilitate chemical reactions that purify water and air. So you can get to know from me right now the importance of gold. But all these were known after the 20th century. But you should have noticed that gold was still important to man even before the 20th century. This is one of the things that you're going to understand during these stories. So, after the council sat and they realized that gold can be able to be used to purify the air of the Nibiru planet, they had to send so many vehicles, let me call them vehicles or planes, to go around the entire universe to see if there is a planet that can be used, that can have so much gold to be mined, that will be used in the purification of the atmosphere of the planet Nibiru. So they went around and around and around looking for that particular planet. Finally, when they returned, one called Enlil, the son of Anu, rose up and said they have been able to identify a planet. It is a beautiful planet. Yes, it has inhabitants, but it also have gold. The planet is beautiful with plenty of water, rich in gold. It has a beautiful thick atmosphere, but the atmosphere is protected by its heavy magnetic fields. Yeah. When they were asked about the inhabitants of the earth, Enlil said, yes, there are inhabitants, but they are not as intelligent as we are. They might be very much hectic to rule, hard to rule, and maybe they may cause problems because even amongst them, they continually fight and kill each other, and some of them even eat blood, eat flesh or meat. But this won't be a problem because the Anunnaki actually had already captured a certain species of their own kind known as the Egigis. Some people say that the Egigis were conquered by the Anunnakis, and so they were subjected to be a workforce of the Anunnakis. But some say no, the Egigi had actually volunteered to be a workforce for the Anunnakis. So, to be able to tame the inhabitants of Earth, the Anunnaki had no problems as long as they had the so-called the Egigi. Now, the Egigi were the workforce of the Anunnakis, the power force of the Anunnakis. These were able to work and also maybe to be guards towards the Anunnakis. As time goes by, they set sail to come to find the planet. To them, the planet was known as Kai, which we now term as Earth. Yeah. So when they came and arrived to the planet Earth, they had to start working immediately, putting the Egigis to work. But the first task was not even to dig or to mine gold. Okay? But before we go to the place of starting to work, which place did they land in? This is in reference also to the Bible. According to the Bible, the Garden of Eden is between two rivers. And also, the place where the Anunnakis arrived on earth was between the Tigris and the Euphrates, the place known as Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia in Greek means a land between two rivers. Yeah, Mesopotamia. Now, Africa is the cradle of mankind, as Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization. Now, where did this civilization come from? When the Anunnakis landed in Mesopotamia, the Egigis began to work. The first task that they were given was to bring up a city that was to be ruled by Enki. Enki was another son of Anu. They had come on earth with Enlil, and so Enki was to rule this city. The city was completed in 7 days, as the Egigi were told to complete the city in 7 days. And after completing the city, Enki became the ruler of the city, and the city was known as Eridu. Eridu was a great city and a point where these aliens, as we might type them now because they came from a different planet known as Nibiru, started to work. This place was a city, a great city that actually protected the outside world from the inside world. Eridu protected all the other outside civilization, all the other animals, all the other humanoids from getting into the space of the Anunnakis. After building the city known as Eridu, the Egigis were now to begin working in gold mines, and the work began. They continued to work hard for years and years and years and years and years. And after 150,000 years of hard work, their production was now starting to be seen. And Enlil, who was in charge of seeing that the gold mine is being worked on properly, and he was also in charge of all the golds that were to be taken to Nibiru, was starting to be happy. Now, Enki the ruler of Eridu said that they needed more and more and more production. So what happened? He said that whatever it takes, let the Ejijis be made to work. So the slave masters were told to make sure that the Ejijis were tortured and whipped so that the production of gold may increase. And that happened. But it got to a point when the Ejijis were very tired of these beatings and whipping and torture until they rebelled. The rebel was led by none other than Altrahasis. Altrahasis was an Ejiji, but he said, for years and years we've been able to labor for the Anunnakis. We were once free, we were once great people, but now look, we have been subjected into slavery. Let us rebel and return to greatness that we were once had. So they began a war. Ejijis were intelligent. They were able to turn the tools they were using in mining to weapons. So war broke. The rebel was great. Blood was shed. Some were killed. And even though they fought bravely, the Ejijis could not defeat the Anunnakis. Finally, they were suppressed. And Enlil thought of destroying all the Ejijis, killing them, and leading to their death and annihilation of all the Ejijis present in Erebu. But his brother Enki came up with a different thought. He said, no, we've been able to live with the Ejijis for a very long time. Why should we now kill and destroy these people who have been our counterparts for a very long time? But because of this rebellion, the Ejijis were no longer able to go back to work at the mines. In fact, they will not go back to work at the mines. So Enki came up with a plan. Enki said that we have around us the ape-like creatures or other hominids. Yes, they looked like the Anunnakis, but they were small in size. Inside, the Anunnakis are said to be about 12 to 15 feet tall, while man or the current hominids were around 6 feet tall in maximum. So what happened is that Enki said that we can use these hominids and try to use them to create a different being that we can be able to use in our ventures of gold mining. Enlil agreed to this. And so what happened? They began the experiments. The first experiment did not go well because what they created were monsters. Huge giants with 2 heads and other ugly looking beings. This experiment was not considered as successful, so it was destroyed. The second experiment was a suggestion that they may use their DNA, splice their DNA together with that of a humanoid female and see the results. And so these they did. But instead of working this in their laboratories, the result that they came up with was taken and was put inside a female humanoid. This was successful. In less than a year, a child was born, a male. They named him Adam, just like we've had in other religious books. They named him Adam. And so Adam tried to grow. He looked more like the Anunnakis than the surrounding humanoids. Now, for Adamu, they also created a female. Yes, they created a female in the same process for Adamu. The name of the female was called Hiva. And this went on. They were able now to mingle the Adamu and the Hiva together, and so the two could be able to reproduce. Now, in this civilization, Adamu and Hiva continued to reproduce and reproduce and reproduce and reproduce, and so their offsprings were used to mine gold for the Anunnakis. They were intelligent, but they were created to be submissive to an extent that they were not going to rebel against the Anunnakis. But as time went by, The children, or maybe the Anunnakis, the children of Anu, began to admire the sons of Adam, or Adam, the children of Adam. So this led to Enki himself marrying one of the humanoids known as Atiti, one of the descendants of Adam known as Atiti, and they gave birth to a son known as Gilgamesh. Okay? No, this son of theirs was not Gilgamesh, but historically Gilgamesh is also an offspring of the Anunnakis and the children of men. The son that was the offspring of Eki and Atiti was known as Adapa. And these relationships went on and went on and went on. And Enki was so much in love with humans more than any other Anunnaki was. So it continued on and on until the time came when the gold was enough. And the planet Nibiru was now approaching Earth. And as the planet Nibiru was approaching Earth, the existing Anunnakis on the face of Earth decided to pack. Let us pack and go back to our home, Nibiru, because it is approaching and the gold we've been able to mine is enough to be able to sustain and protect our planet, Nibiru. So they began to pack their things. Now, as they packed and were lifted up on their vessels and went to the planet Nibiru, humankind now began to see difference. A story is made of a farmer that woke up in the morning, and when he got to his pen, he realized that the animals were not at peace at all. The goats, the sheep were going around in shackles. They were not at peace. Some of them were hurting themselves. They wanted to get out of the pen. Yeah. Also, the horses and the donkeys were not at peace at all. So what happened? He got out and looked at the sky and he saw an object approaching, a clear object, and it continued to approach. Eventually, volcanoes started to erupt, huge volcanoes, and these melted stones will erupt and go up into the sky. Finally, the farmer noticed that these stones were turning back on Earth. It was like the rain of sulfur. The hot stones will hit the earth and destroy everything. After that, a story is also given of a fisherman that was fishing, but eventually the water disappeared after he heard a strange noise. The water disappeared and fish were everywhere, and he wondered what a great catastrophe was this. But as he was still wondering, he heard a clear voice of a spring, but there were no springs around or rivers around. But when he gazed deeper, he could see something like a mountain, only that it was not a mountain. It was water, a huge formation of a water mount that was coming hugely. Eventually, everything was covered with water. The earth had been destroyed. It is said that in any time Nibiru approaches earth, there must be a catastrophe and something must happen to the planet Earth. But this might have been the desires of the Anunnakis. The writing suggests that Enlil has said that there is no use of man because now they have had their share of gold, they need to live. But the creation they created on earth were too much intelligent. So what happened? He said that they should destroy them with water. But Enki, because of his love for the humankind, said no, let us leave at least one with his family to be able to take care of this earth. The one that they chose was a good man. He said to have been a good man. His name was Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim was the man that was chosen, just like in the biblical story of Noah. And he made an ark, just like in the biblical story of Noah. And him together with his family were able to secure animals, and he continued to live and populate the earth. So this is the story of the creation of civilization of mankind and how we were able to evolve technologically so fast to an extent that we cannot compare the development we've had so far with those of like millions of years ago. But as I had said sometimes back, that I will try to debunk the story of the Anunnakis, because most of the parts of Zachariah Hitchens' stories have been disproven, or have been said to be not right according to the recent findings, because during those days there were no technology that we have as we have today. So when you come to the Bible, there have been lots of conspiracies that are held in account with these stories of the Anunnakis. Some people say it is true that it is the Anunnaki that made mankind. But as we relate the story of Anunnaki, this relates to about hundreds of thousands of years ago. And then where we can be able to say this is just a theory is whereby now some people suggest that it is true because we find the Nephilims in the Bible, or maybe the Anakites or the Anakims in the Bible, who are said to be giants. Okay, when you read the book of Genesis, I think chapter 5 and 6, you realize that when the sons of God mingled with the daughters of men, they gave birth to the great men of renown. The great men of renown. Here the Bible does not call them giants. They are called the great men of renown. Being great and renowned is relative. You can be a huge man, or you can be wise. You can be great intellectually. You can be great in the things that you are doing. Yeah, you can be different from other people. But the issue of them being giants is from the book of Enoch, the first and the second books of Enoch, which are not canonical, or they have not been able to find their ways into the Bible. So these creatures being giants are in relative to the book of Enoch, which said when the sons of God, or in the book of angels they are called, or in the book of Enoch they are called angels. When angels came and mingled with the daughters of men, the number of the angels were 200. They came and mingled with the daughters of men. They gave birth to giants. And these giants existed. But these are two different periods. If we can relate the Bible's creation story to the Anunnakis coming to earth, it is highly different. Why? Because when you go to the timings, you realize from the Bible, from Genesis, or maybe from the creation to the current time, it's about 6,000 or 6,500 years. Yeah, from creation to the current time, it's about 6,000 and some hundreds of years. But when you talk of the Anunnaki, it's hundreds of thousands of years. You understand? So that brings a huge connotation of difference. There might be some similarities in the naming, because Adam, though in the Sumerian or the Greek, Adamu means the first man, but in Hebrew, Adam means earthling, or one who came from the earth. But these similarities also come that there are many texts, from Indian texts, Chinese texts, and lots of ancient texts that say that the gods, the blood of the gods mingled with earth to create the first man. Yeah, so maybe it is a metaphor to say that God's DNA mingled with man's DNA to create the modern man. Okay, because in Egyptian text or writings or tablets, or maybe the hieroglyphs of Egypt, they state that the tears of God, together with the soil or earth, led to the creation of man. So it is like the DNA, because both in blood and in the tears you can get the DNA. And this is what was used, according to the Sumerian text, to create the modern man. So those are theories, and I said I will try to debunk it, though I'm debunking it in a religious perspective, not in a scientific perspective. Maybe in a religious perspective, and also in a historical perspective. First, I have said that the years does not relate. If we use the Bible to to say that these things that the Anunnakis or the Sumerian tablets are writing are in the same relations to the Bible. I would say that they are not, because the Bible, according to the Bible, the earth has only existed for 6,000 years. Okay, not even tens of thousands, but 6,000 years and above, and slightly above 6,000 years. These have been calculated by the so-called the young earth theorists. Yeah, there are those that are called the young earth theorists that say that the earth is young, so young, it's like thousands of years old, not even tens of thousands of years old. But according to the Sumerian texts, these beings are hundreds of thousands of years, and the Homo sapiens sapien, or the modern man, is around 50,000 years or so. Yeah, or so. Yeah, if at all we could put it to that. But the beginning of it is around 300,000 years, so 350,000 years. So you can see the difference of that. Also, somebody was saying that Anunnakis can be related with the term the Anakites. But now the Anakites are not even found in the book of Genesis. Yes, the Nephilims are found, but the Anakites are not found in the book of Genesis. The Anakites are found in the book of Joshua. When Joshua sends Caleb, and he sends Caleb and some of his companions to go and look upon the city. No, sorry. When Moses sends Joshua and Caleb and some other people to go and see the city that they were supposed to conquer, when they get there, they come back with a news, or maybe a rumor, and some of the men say that we've seen them. The people are huge. They are as tall. We've also seen the Anakites, who are so huge. Before them, we are like grasshoppers. You understand? We are as small as the grasshoppers. So this whole thing of the Anakites, yes, they might have been tall. It might have been a metaphor, or it might just be a metaphor. But these people are saying, yes, before the Anakites, we were like grasshoppers. So, but Caleb and Joshua said, no, we can be able to conquer this city. We can capture this city. We can take it. This city belongs to us. This is when Moses has sent them to Canaan. You understand? Not Joshua. It is found in the book of Exodus. Yeah. This is when Moses had sent these guys to the land of Canaan to be able to spy the land, and so they found these tall people called the Anakites. But now you realize that this is not in Genesis. This is way after the floods. Way after the floods, when now the destruction of the Nephilims had happened. And this is now after the floods, when now the people of Israel are coming out of Egypt, and now they are going to get another land called Canaan. That is another debunking, that this person who said that the Anunnaki term and the Anakite term are related. No, this is a highly different kind of people. Yeah, there are giants, there have been giants, but notice that if we are talking about the size of the Anunnakis, is about 12 feet tall, and some ancient writings depict them as taller than that, 24 feet or maybe taller than that. You understand? So that means that even these historical beliefs are different. The second debunking that I would like to debunk is that the Sumerians have their writings. There are some sections of these tablets that are, we might say, to be like relating to some other writings, like the writings in the Chinese scripts depicting of the worldwide floods. Okay, the worldwide floods is almost in every single civilization, in many civilizations. Like it's said to be like 140 civilization, maybe 140 tribes or clans or maybe nationalities from China, India, Egypt, Mesopotamia. Many of them describe the worldwide flood, and some people say they copied each other, but when they are studied, they actually came up at the same time. You understand? So this means that it is something that happened at a certain time and was recorded by different people, different languages, different tribes worldwide almost at the same time. Because if it was a copy, a copying of certain, these people copying the Sumerians, the Chinese copying the Indians, it will have been different periods of time. But actually, the whole thing, when they are studied, they erupt almost the same time. So the only thing that actually is agreeable is about the issue of the floods. But now, when it comes to the creation, I would say the Sumerians might have had their own creation theory of about where they had originated as the Sumerians. You understand? Yes, they might have come with their own ideas or their own story of where they had come from. You understand? Just like many other languages, many other tribes in Africa, in Asia, in America, all the tribes in the world have their own stories of origin, where they had originated from. In my own tribe, we have our own culture of where we had originated from. In Africa, even the Nigerians, the Igbo have their own stories of origin. In Kenya, even the Maasais, the Kikuyus, they have their own stories of origin. Now, if at all we study all these stories of origin, we might be able to find some truth in them, but we won't say that this is what happened worldwide. You understand? When you go to the Greeks, they have their own stories of origin, where they had originated from. So we cannot say that actually these stories are true, or this is where the Greeks originated from, and so the world originated from. We can actually say that this is their own narratives of origin. You understand? Yeah. When you study literature, there's that part, narratives of origin, where people say why we are, how we came to be the way we are, our origin stories. So this, according to me, I say, if it is at all written in the Sumerian text with the Sumerian languages, I say that maybe the Sumerians had their own stories of origin. Yeah. There might be other relativity to their stories in when they are seen with other stories. Actually, I've already said the issue of the floods, and maybe the creation of Adam, and so forth and so forth and so on. And there are lots of similarities with other stories in the world. But the only thing I know is that maybe the Sumerians were highly advanced, and maybe they taught the world many things, because among the things that the Sumerians actually were able to bring, mathematics. Most of the rules that we are using in mathematics currently come from Sumeria, from the Sumerians, or Sumer. Yeah. Writings, they were the first people to start their writings. The earliest civilization, let's talk about the wheel. You see, the wheel actually originated from the Sumerians. The wheel is a very, when we are talking about civilizations, we cannot forget the wheel, because the wheel came first, then the chariots, then we now have cars, aeroplanes have wheels, almost every locomotive have a wheel. So these ones came from them, from the agrarian revolution. We know that the agrarian revolution came from Mesopotamia. Organized cities, actually, even the organized cities came from the Sumerians. Okay, so there are lots of things that we can say actually came from the Sumerians, and this is true. We cannot debunk that. But historically, there are other things that also came from different civilizations apart from the Sumerians. You understand? So because of this integrity of the Sumerians, it is said that maybe they were taught these things by the aliens, how to make weapons, how to fight, how to make locomotives, how to do and many other things. You understand? This according to the book of Enoch. But Enoch does not specifically speak of the Sumerians. Enoch speaks of the entire world. So there are many ways of debunking the theories of the Anunnakis. Though we don't debunk them entirely, because there are other findings, like for example, Zachariah Hitchens called planet Nibiru as the 12th planet. It has been studied by the NASA and some other researchers, and they have noticed that there is another planet. They have called it the 9th planet. You understand? And so, which in relations to the writings of the Sumerians, they are related with this planet. You understand? So that is more of the things that we can say about this planet Nibiru. But just sit down and think of it according to your own senses. Can it be true that Nibiru is a planet that actually brought civilization to us? Did aliens create man, or did God create man? Because some people have come to say that what we are worshiping are not actually true creators. They might be these fallen, or not fallen gods, but they might be these alien races that we are worshiping. So what is your thoughts? Just comment, and as I always say, tell a friend to tell a friend. Ikikubamba sana, hit the notification button, and let's continue subscribing. Thank you very much. Ciao.